let me start by acknowledging that we're here on Garden Yarta and acknowledge elders past and present and any First Nations people who might be in the audience. It's important to understand this land was never ceded. And I also want to acknowledge UniSA, the great partnership we have with UniSA. I'm enjoying immensely being able to present these talks in this space, which is allowing much more direct engagement with staff and students from the university, and we're seeing really good benefits and outcomes from these closer ties. And fortuitous that today our guest speaker is an alumnus of both institutions. So Caren Elliss is a very successful local product designer specialising in furniture. That in itself is a huge achievement. I've enjoyed watching Caren's progress since I started at JamFactory forever ago when she was an associate. And it's been tremendous to see how well she's been able to kind of utilise being based here in that practice. I'm pleased that we have Caren's work included in the new Exuberance exhibition, which you should all come and see if you haven't had a chance to. She's collaborated with artists from the AP Wildlands at Coogee and beautiful upholstered seating products in the exhibition. She's also been engaged this year as the external mentor for the associates in our furniture studio. I think you all will get a great deal out of that. But today, here for the next half hour and then some questions, Caren Elliss.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming. There's some faces I know, some faces I don't. Plan is just to run you through my journey so far. I'll try and be as quick as possible. There's a few slides, but I'll spend some time on ones that I think are a bit more important than others. Just a little bit of background, because some of you have heard the background, some of you haven't. So as Brian just said, I graduated from industrial design at UniSA. An important part of that was in my third year, I actually got an internship to go to Mexico, a place called Tezeuca. This is what I basically ended up going into. So they, for want of a better word, they pimp cars up. So they put the extra bits on cars. So I think these are Chevys. And I think I said to the furniture studio the other day that they had 3D scanners. This is 2007. They had 3D scanners, and he's 3D scanning the front of the car at the moment. At that time, I know they're a bit more available now, but at that time it pretty much blew my mind because he was scanning that and it was coming up on a computer. There was things like 3D printers, things that I hadn't really had the opportunity to use, but they were there. So it was just like a whole new world. But what I was tasked with, although there was all these cars around, there was German people doing clay modelling of cars, I got told straight up, you're going to do furniture. So prior to that, I had no inclination really of where I was actually going to go with my, my degree, but I got told furniture. So that's what I did. For 4 months, I worked on furniture for Air Design, and it was for New Loft apartments. So, New York apartments. And that was the direction that they wanted to go. So I started working on some of those with them. There was just so much machinery there on a large scale, which really sort of opened my mind. So I came back after that, graduated from UniSA with a furniture product, and partway through that, I was like, I want to apply for the JAM. So I felt as though I had knowledge in terms of materiality and how to design, but I really wanted to get my hands dirty. I actually wanted to get my hands on product, and actually I thought that if I did that, that'll make me a better designer. So that's what I did. So I applied and I was accepted. There we go. So the 2 years at the JAM were huge. And I got my hands on jobs. I felt as though that I was thrown into the deep end, because I was. But I learned. I was like just a sponge. I'm still a sponge. I think being an industrial designer means that you're wanting to learn about materiality, and you're wanting to know enough to speak to people that are skilled in that area, and then use that information to then go and develop your own sort of stuff. So I'd never say that I'm a master of anything at all, but I know stuff about lots of things. And I talk to people that are skilled in that area. So after the jam, I went down to George Street Studio. I was invited by Lex Stobie at the time to come down to George Street, and he had a full woodworking setup there. And he took me under his wing. He showed me the ropes. I was very green still, but I kind of knew what I was doing as well, and I just needed a little bit of extra sort of help along the way. So I started focusing on wood furniture more than anything, and I was doing fit outs. My first real job out of the JamFactory was a fit out for a wine bar where I designed everything and made everything, and pretty much went on from there. So I was making, this is something I made during that time, and this is pretty much how I work still today. So I'll do some sort of chicken scratch kind of thoughts, then I'll jump into CAD, and then I'll sort of start prototyping, start making, bringing it into the real world, and go from there. Closer? All right. And so along this way, detailing was very important to me. So this was like a console table that I did with a private commissions. I got lots of private commissions, did large tables, and it was very much wood-based with a little bit of CAD work in there as well. So I was trying to figure out how this is all going to sort of work together. Whilst I was at George Street Studio, I know this looks like a pretty dodgy photo to show, but whilst I was there, the deli next door became available. And at the time, Alison Smiles, my partner, we were also running the Elephant Walk on Melbourne Street, which was like a night business where we were both trying to become a ceramicist, and I was trying to become a furniture studio, and sort of like, you know, we were a little bit older when we started, so we needed to make sure the cash flow kept on coming whilst we were sort of building ourselves up. So the deli right next door to George Street Studio became available, and I was like, I was offered it basically, and I said to Alison, "Oh, this conversation happened today, but let's not do that." And she was like, "Let's do that." So we did that, and so basically, this is Mr. Sunshine's today. What we made of it, we had it for a year. We basically pulled it down and built it back up. So all the cabinetry was done by myself, and Alison and I designed the sort of flow of it. We were aware of what we needed because we had also worked in hospitality businesses before. The lights there were actually made at the Jam. They were blown at the Jam. So constantly just trying to sort of, come back on what I'd also sort of learnt before, I guess. After that time, I pretty much, after doing a lot of private commissions and doing one-offs for people, and sometimes feeling like I was reinventing the wheel somewhat, I wanted to sort of tap into that industrial design sort of process. And this is where I made a bit of a pivotal change in designing, and I wanted to start making work that I wanted to make. And so this range is called Luna, and it was really my industrial design training sort of coming to the fore. So I had skills that I learnt at the Jam, but this was really an exploration in industrial processes of the laser cutting, folding, welding, and to this date, it's actually been the most successful that I've done. In saying this, for some reason, I have this thing about seating. I constantly do seating, so we're working on it. Anyway, so you can see this is basically what the product ended up looking like. The top right, you can see sort of like laser cut, and then it's folded on an absolute line. So all the sides come together, the top flicks in the top, and it's welded, and you cannot see the welds. So it kind of, people go, what? When you tell them what it is. And obviously the wooden top, I also do as well. So here's a little bit of, I think we're probably, I've been really successful. So during its, so this was around, 2016 to 2018, I went to Den Fair, and I got some real massive leads. I showed this work at Denfair amongst some other things. And then I started getting included on some really large projects. So this is WeWork, which I know doesn't exist anymore. Wasn't the stalls. I don't know where they are. But so I had WeWork in Melbourne and Sydney, probably about 350 pieces. And that was through Koskela, Sydney. And that was a lead that I got through Denfair, which continued to grow. This is a local, this is at the Britannia Hotel with a Stillo commercial, about 150. So in its soft spot, I was getting at least 100 at a time, and I had I was moving my my business from private commissions, so residential, into commercial, and that was the process in which it was pretty much taking. What I was doing with this is expanding the range. So I was using some terrazzo here. I actually met the Michael Karakoulis, who runs Fibonacci, which is the terrazzo company, along the way, and he said, design me something where someone can sit at a laptop in a corner somewhere, New York loft apartment kind of style thing that kept on coming up. So this is what I came up with. And I guess the thing that I particularly liked about this is that you could just see that flat line on its side view. That really appealed to me. Okay, and then further on from this, so Adelaide Modern sort of brought about a new change as well for my practice. So I sort of started to get into upholstery. So this is my response to Fleur & Co.'s daybed. So the idea behind this was Fred Lowen and Ernest Roddick, who are Fleur. They developed a friendship in an intern camp, so a refugee camp, once they fled from Nazi Germany. I called it Aurora because Aurora in Latin means dawn, and I was thinking about the new beginning. I was thinking about their friendship that they formed in this pretty, dire place. And it was a new beginning for them. They built furniture, which I think Myer was the first place where they really started, they had so many different pieces and they became pretty prolific in the Australian marketplace. And this was my first this was me looking at upholstery and going back into that language and those skills that I learned at the JamFactory. So as much as this probably gets put against a wall, Buggerlugs here decided to put a nice feature on the back of it. But I wanted to sort of follow the wave, and that wave has actually continued to be a part in my projects further along. I really like curves, and I do like minimal things, but that's starting to change. But curves are definitely an approach. So I always prototype things. I always bring in that industrial designer sort of approach. So this was the point at which I went, well, I really want those waves to be exactly how I want them to be. So I sought out CNCing the foam, which I was able to do locally. And that's, like I just said, has been a progressive feature in my work along the way. About 2018, Ellison? 2018. Alison decided to go to Plainfield, Massachusetts to do a residency with Sergei Isapov, which was a ceramicist who is brilliant. It was in Cummington. We got off the plane and Alison drove from New York up to Cummington, which was about 8 hours. And I found myself, we did hired an Airbnb. Alison said, come along. And I'm like, all right, what will I do? Anyway, so we found ourselves in an Airbnb on the top of a post office that was built in probably the 1800s, and it was snowing all around. And I didn't have a car and there was nothing anywhere, but it was beautiful. So I pretty much stayed in the Airbnb most of the time. We went out at night, obviously, but there was nothing there. So I was sitting by the fire, reminiscing, watching people sort of jog in the snow outside and the regular postman turn up, the dog come out, and that was it. But I found myself starting to reminisce. I don't know why I started reminiscing about BMXs, but in the 80s, BMX was the thing for me. So I had a BMX, something like that. It wasn't a mongoose, that's mongoose, but I had a Ricardo. Anyway, it was like that. I thought it was to have it, parents. Anyway, so I started thinking about that and just thinking about, and I remember as a kid looking at being on that bike and just looking at the way that the tube was sort of bent. I just thought it was shit hot. We had a block in the corner, down the corner, all the kids in the neighbourhood would go in, the older kids would build a BMX track, we would go on the new jumps. My dad even took me to go racing once with BMX. So I was pretty much into it, loved all the clothing, all that sort of stuff. It was the time that BMX Bandits came out, so I thought it was pretty ace to see Nicole Kidman, a girl, on a BMX. So it really resonated with me. From there, that time at Plainfield, I came up with a pony series. This is based on the BMXs. So we have the Little Nipper. Pony was, when I was a kid, if you went up someone's driveway and sort of did a stunt off the other end, we would go, oh, you just chucked a pony. So this is where pony came from. So we have horse, this is where the horse thing comes. So Little Nipper, we have the pony, and we have the Brumby. With this, the perforation, that material is actually, it's from PET water bottles. So it's marine grade, it's vinyl. I try to stay away from leather, just for obvious reasons. It does actually, people do think that it's leather, but it is a sustainable product as well, which is sourced in Australia. And I guess that's a constant thing that I try and do. I try and, part of my training, I did do 1 year of a master's before getting accepted into the Jam. It is important to me, and I'm trying constantly to put that into my work. It's important. I think if you're putting things out in the world, you need to have a conscious sort of mind about what you're putting out there. And I think I said to the furniture guys the other day, saying, well, why will I make another chair? Because there's already chairs. Well, okay, I need to sort of resolve that in my mind of why I'm making another chair. So I want to put those features into my design. So that's the ponies. I guess the most successful thing with the ponies so far has been my relationship with Pirate Life. Very soon on in the journey, when we got back, Studiogram, we're doing their fit out at Port Adelaide, the brewery there, and I was able to put these under the nose of them, and they liked them. They wanted wormy chestnut, which is on the top. And I think, at a bit of a guess, I think we're up to around probably 400 pieces for Pirate Life at this point. And inside, outside. And the development from the relationship with Pirate Life has been that as their brewery expanded, they never actually intended on having these stalls outside. But they did go outside with wood tops on them with no covering. So I was like, one day. And they were also like, So I tried to find a local product. Pirate Life is also all about sustainability. And I found a local product that actually has this high-density polyethylene, which is taken from curbside waste here in South Australia and mixed with wood chips and like a byproduct from the forestry as well. So they're combined together to create this product. This can go outside. So we started off doing just the stools and we trialled it. We trialled it for heat. We trialled it for how well it would stand up. It stands up really well. And we ended up changing all their tabletops as well because they were also wood. So it's been a very good relationship with Pirate Life. They're always open to, I'll say, hey, this thing, and they'll go, yes, or not yet. So yeah, and another relationship with, we went on further than that to say those stools, we love them, but backs, and I was like, yeah, thinking about backs. So we now have backs. So the bottom corner is a render, and that's pretty much where I come from, very quick render. I show the client, and more than not, the render does end up looking how the end product does. And just, I have a relationship with the Stillo commercial. They won the Sky City job. And I was asked to create a product based on the Pony series, but it needed to sort of have an altered design because the part of the project was to have local artists to fit out the casino itself, but it had to be something that had never been seen before. They wanted new, fresh sort of product. So in consultation with them and 9 architects, we went about creating some tables, some stools, and some larger stools as well for the West Bar area. There's a little bit of what's what it looked like. I think the furniture studio guys have heard me talk about the colour. That was the colour that we actually made in the lab because we ended up going that far. We just couldn't find the right copper for the job, and that ended up getting created just for them, which is something I'd never sort of come across before, but it was a good experience. And then we get to the Tanandi collaboration with Akunchi and the artist Katura Zimran. And so this was presented by AGSA and JamFactory, and this is the piece that's actually in the new Exuberance exhibition now, Gallery 1 at the JamFactory. So Akunchi artists are in Hass Bluff in Northern Territory, and I had a meeting with Margaret Hancock Davis to sort of say, well, here's some fabrics. Who would you like to sort of work with? And I saw Katura's straight away, and I just went, that one. She was like, that one, because that really Katura's work really, really spoke to me. And initially, it was just the graphic nature of the pulley. And the pulley depict the rocks and the sandhills. So these are rocks and sandhills around Hass Bluff where Katura lives. And on designing this chair, which I call the boulder chair, and I called it the boulder chair because pulleys are rocks and sandhills, and it's the kind of, it just kept on coming back to me about something big, something that can, I don't know, embrace the user, I guess. But what I wanted to do with this project was I wanted the chair to be the carrier for Katura's work, and I wanted it to sort of show the story behind her textile design. And the story is that Katura's mother and grandmother, her husband, a large part of her family actually paint. And she was looked after her grandmother when she was young, and she was told by her grandmother that one day she will paint. So her family's tradition will also get passed over to Katura. So the story has been handed down. So the sandhills are actually her mother's story, and the rocks are Katura's story. And she said that every time she paints, she feels closer to her mother. So that really sort of resonated with me. So I really wanted to have the work like embrace you and give you a big warm hug when you were sitting on it, which is why the wraparound, and it's pretty comfy as well. Katura got to sit on this and she said it was really, really comfy, and she was also quite blown away that it was the first time that she'd seen her work on a furniture object, which was amazing. In saying that, Katura is prolific. I feel honoured to have actually worked with her. If you see Melbourne Fashion Week, if you see runways, if you see gala events, someone famous is wearing Couturiers textile. Prolific is an understatement. And I'm really proud to say that she actually got an Order of Australia earlier this year for her service for visual arts. So I'm pretty proud to have worked with her. And from this and the opportunity that the Jam and AGSA gave me, we are now having conversations. So to me, that's really exciting. Next. And this is another, so based on Adelaide Modern and doing some upholstery, I was able to sort of, I guess, get some confidence along with Alison's help to sort of go bigger. So Le Deux to Play was a collaboration that Alison Smiles, my partner, and myself had 2020? Yeah, 2020-21. And it was at the time when COVID kind of reared its head. And I think it's fair to say in South Australia, we did not feel the effects as much as sort of the eastern states, but we still did feel some effects. I had a mini panic because a lot of my work actually does go to, Melbourne, Sydney. And I was like, whoa, what? Anyway, it actually gave us an opportunity. So Craft ACT at the time were asking for people to put in expressions of interest for exhibitions and come up with sort of ideas. And, we were just sort of talking and forever we'd said, let's collaborate on something, but it never came up. And this was our opportunity. And I guess, there was a lot of bleakness on the television and news was pretty awful. People's mental health was getting affected. And we wanted to try and have an impact on that and turn it around. So Le Deux means to play. Alison came up with that. And we had our exhibition at 2021 at Craft ACT. Unfortunately, we were in lockdown. When we came out of lockdown, they sort of went in lockdown, so kind of that sort of happened. But we wanted to embody, we were saying colour, happiness, joy. Let's just have fun. Let's just throw it out. We don't have to sort of work towards a particular brief. Let's just do it. So this gave us the opportunity to actually just chat and talk about some things that we may have wanted to do before, but now we got the opportunity. So we did get the exhibition. We got an Arts SA grant and we went about making some pieces. And part of that was also, the COVID grant was also to re-inject some funds into the local economy. So we partnered with about 11 plus local people, artists and manufacturers to also help make some of this for us as well. So I call this a super lounge. I'm not sure if that's its name, but that's the name I call it. And the textile was actually designed by Alison. The design was Alison and I together. The textile was screen printed by Jake Holmes onto commercial grade linen. And it took about a lot of consultation together, about 5 weeks of me just learning sort of the way to go, lots of chats back to the upholsterer, just saying, okay, well, what's going to be the best way to do this? Prototype, that was the first prototype down the bottom. And I think my need or want to make this is that I've loved modular lounges forever. Featherstone has been someone who I look up to, kind of envious of my friends in childhood who had the modular split level sunken lounges. So it's a bit of an homage to that. So that's where we went from that. And I learnt a lot through that process. These are some other pieces that were made for Le Deux as well. There's that wave design coming through again, which the upholsterer always goes, but they still do it. And they do it really well. This is also going back to the knowledge and skills that I've sort of learned along the way as well, to do some side tables, look at joinery, look at things that, have some I don't know, definition, some interest, point of interest as well. And these little guys have been I guess the sort of paved the road forward for us to sort of keep on collaborating. So this was another piece that we collaborated on that came out of Ladeur as well. It's for sale at the JamFactory. It's starting to weave its little web across Australia. Other places are starting to stock it as well. And, you know, this was about embracing joy, trying to, you know, just get some happiness. And we sort of went through some, I guess it was the partnering of Alison's ceramic knowledge. I kept on saying, I want to be your apprentice, tell me everything about it. So that's pretty much what's been happening, still happening. And there's some other products that were included. And this is a constant thing that Alison and I are forever talking about at the moment, about how we sort of, move this product up. I think if you've been to any of my talks previously, I've always said about how I actually want to, I know Brian knows about this, peaks and troughs. Those larger commissions bring about a good sizable amount of money, but then they're often, there, nothing, there. So bringing something in between, so your bread and butter items as artists are like a good thing to do. And this is part of the process. 3D printing some moulds so that we can get some efficiencies. So what we do with the process is, we've 3D printed parts so we can get that preciseness, and we can do multiples. But what we do is we go back to like forever having our hands on the product, which is a massive feature for me. So they're all hand carved, and all those patterns are random. And this really, this was a collaboration, but, the surface decoration is something that I've always really admired that Alison has. She's able to go from here to here. I don't work like that. I'm very different. So having this involvement and sharing knowledge and basically having conversations often about, why would you approach it that way? I would approach it this way. Oh, let's do a bit of both. And then we're moving forward with it. So it's been, we're pretty proud of it. Let's just say that. We're really happy. We have so many people say, every time I have an espresso out of that, it makes me really happy. And, that was the embodiment of the exhibition. It's, it's the little guy that keeps on going. So we're pretty happy about. These are just some ways in which we 3D print, do some wash and cures, a bit of a learning exercise as well. I guess in terms of my practice to date, along the way people have sort of contacted me to have some involvement or get me to make things for them. From Pirate Life, I got called by Ashoni Creative, Dave Ferguson, he's a graphic designer. He just said one day, look, I'm doing some graphic designs for a company and they need some furniture. I've seen your stuff at Pirate Life. Can we have a chat? And that was probably about 2 years ago, and this is what we're doing now. So that's another sort of string to my business. Dave calls me and goes, I've got this one, and I go, awesome, Dave. And then we go ahead from there. So this was a hospitality business, which is based in a church. So your prayers have been answered is Dave's tongue-in-cheek based on this being involved in the church. So I made some tables and also the bin, which he calls the sin bin or confession bin, because it's, as we all know, it's based on the confessional. So that's them sort of in situ. And, this relationship gives me, Dave calls and I go, ooh, I get a bit excited about what's Dave going to ask me to do this time. And he just goes, do a bin. And I'll go, awesome. And I'll do something. You go, oh, let's tweak it. So it's another relationship that's growing along the way. So this was the confessional pattern, CNC'd onto the planks of the bins. That's all I can say about that. Sometimes you get some quirky things and you go, all right, let's do it. And for me, like it's fun because it gives me another opportunity to sort of, I have a CNC machine. It's about programming. It's about, blending all those skills that I've learned along the way and to sort of, push me, go a little bit further. And I'm constantly enjoying that. Being creative is about trying to find happiness in being creative. And that is the journey that I'm hopefully heading on. And I guess of late, just last year, I started freelancing with Precious Plastics Melbourne. So basically, they're a business that sells. They've developed their own low volume injection machines. Not me. Okay. And so they have shredders. And so what they do is they sell to community groups, to scouts, to schools, so that they can educate children and adults on waste, really. That's what it's all about. And that's that sustainability coming back. And that's me wanting to share the skills that I have and be involved in some of those groups and not necessarily making product, but helping others. And this particular program, you should have seen how happy I was when this worked. And it is a bubble wand. It's for little kids to put their wand in some detergent and make bubbles. But the background of this is that this is for Sea Museum. So it was a school holiday project where kids would go to beaches and collect plastic waste. They'd collect all their plastic waste up and make this. So I get an email or a phone call from Precious Plastics Melbourne and saying, we've got a project with Sea Museum. We want a whale inside a bubble wand. Can you do it? So we work on doing that. Once we get the tick of approval from the client for the bubble wand, then they send it back to me and they say, okay, now make the mould. So that's all my work. So that for me is, it's very small scale, but for me it's the geeky industrial designer thing that I get really happy about. And like I just said, it's all about the journey and having happiness along the way. So that is it, guys. That's where I'm up to so far.